The footage begins with a shaky camera, headlights slicing through thick Appalachian fog. You can almost smell the wet pine and engine oil. The timestamp flickers October 12, 2023, 1:03 a.m. I first saw it on a flash drive mailed to my office in Knoxville. No return address, just a label that said Boone County, final night. I thought it was another hoax. People send me supposed evidence all the time, blurred shapes, fake EVP readings, forest lights. But when I plugged it in, the audio alone made my stomach knot. The recording begins with laughter. Two young voices, male and female, probably early 20s. You hear the campfire crackling, a guitar strumming off key. Then somewhere deep behind the mic, a third voice whispers, low, drawn out, like it's mimicking their rhythm, but speaking a different language. The campers never react. Not at first, but the sound gets louder every minute, blending with the wind until it's right behind them. Then comes the screaming, muffled by distance, maybe the phone falling to the dirt. Static floods everything. I listened 23 times before calling the Boone County Sheriff's Department. They told me two names, Jacob Lowe and Sarah Whitman. Both reported missing that same weekend near the Cranberry Wilderness trailhead. No trace, no tents, no gear. I drove there 3 days later. The locals at the gas station looked away when I mentioned the trail. One old man spat tobacco and said, "That forest don't keep echoes?" Fear feeds on them. Fog crawled down from the ridge as I parked by the ranger's cabin. The temperature dropped fast, 36 degrees, maybe less. No birds, no crickets, just the hum of power lines and that strange emptiness, like the woods were holding their breath. I took my recorder and pressed rec. If you're watching this, subscribe and we'll keep uncovering what others won't. Then I stepped into the dark. A mile in, I found the first sign, a ring of stones where a fire once burned, and something half buried beside it. A melted phone case, screen shattered, still warm to the touch, though it shouldn't have been. When I turned off my flashlight, I heard it, the same whisper from the tape, not from the trees, from the soil beneath my boots. The road to Cranberry Wilderness ends before the map says it should. Beyond that, the forest eats the asphalt and the fog swallows every sound. My headlights flickered, as if something heavy was shifting in the air itself. I parked where the trail sign leaned sideways, half buried in mud. The wooden letters read, Cranberry Ridge Trail, closed since 2018. I'd been warned not to go in after sunset. Sheriff Miller told me over the phone, "You'll lose GPS about 2 miles up and radio doesn't work past the ridge." He wasn't exaggerating. The moment I crossed that threshold, my compass needle spun and froze west. My phone screen flickered to black, then restarted. But before it died completely, one last notification popped up. Bluetooth device connected. Jacob's Galaxy S22. I stood there in the dark, phone light trembling over pine trunks, slick with moss. The sound of dripping water echoed everywhere, but it didn't seem to fall from above. It came from beneath the leaves, like something underground was exhaling. I started recording with my handheld camcorder, a Canon XF705 modified for low light. The red indicator blinked as the forest swallowed my footsteps. Every 20 feet I marked a tree with chalk, white streaks glowing faintly under the beam. I learned that from an old ranger years ago. Always mark your way back because memory bends in the woods. About 30 minutes in, I found the remnants of a campsite. 2 folding chairs overturned, a half-burnt log, and a kettle filled with rainwater and ash. A torn jacket sleeve caught on a branch, black nylon branded Patagonia. Inside the pocket was a candy wrapper and a Polaroid photo, damp but legible. Jacob and Sarah both smiling under a waterfall, time-stamped October 8, 2023, 4 days before the recording. I kept the photo in my notebook, then noticed faint impressions in the mud. Barefoot prints, small, maybe a woman's, but deeper than they should have been, as if the person had been standing still for hours. The prints led toward the ridge into denser fog. As I followed, the audio recorder picked up something odd. Static bursts, rhythmic hums, almost like Morse code but irregular. Pause, pause. I played it back and noticed faint layers underneath. Whispers again, though fainter, distorted like overlapping tape. Come closer. The words were almost gentle, as if coaxing me forward. At 2:43 a.m., the temperature plummeted. My breath turned white. The trees began to thin into a clearing surrounded by stones stacked unnaturally, small cairns each about knee-height. Some balanced bones at their peaks. I don't know if they were animal or human, but they were arranged like antennas pointing upward. Then my camera froze. The screen pixelated, shifted hues and displayed a frame I hadn't recorded. Jacob and Sarah sitting by a campfire laughing. The same footage I'd seen on the flash drive, except this time they weren't laughing at the same angle. The perspective had changed, as if someone else had been filming from behind them. I backed away slowly, checking the viewfinder. The image flickered again, now empty clearing, my own silhouette barely visible. But in the corner between two trees, something tall shifted. I caught a single frame before static took over. A figure draped in wet cloth, standing motionless with its face turned toward the soil. I should have run. Instead, I whispered into the mic, "Field note, there's movement near the eastern ridge. Possible survivor or something else." The static deepened into a low hum vibrating through the ground. My flashlight dimmed to a dying ember. For a moment, I could see nothing but fog and the faint white of my chalk marks. Then a whisper broke through the hum, closer this time, not from the recorder, but inches from my right ear. It said my name. I turned sharply at nothing, only mist curling where my breath should have been. I stumbled backward and caught sight of something nailed to a tree, a piece of paper, damp and torn. The writing was smeared but still visible. We heard them too. That's when I realized there were more than two missing. The sheriff's report only mentioned Jacob and Sarah, but someone else had been out here. Maybe another group, maybe before them. I flipped the page and found a faint map drawn in pencil, marking a cave near the ridge. A note underlined twice, "Voices stronger underground." I followed the path with the light from my camera. The terrain grew steep, and the whispering seemed to fade, replaced by distant knocking, like stones tapping in sequence. The deeper I went, the heavier the air became. Even breathing sounded like static through a radio. I found the mouth of the cave at 3:21 a.m. Cold air poured out of it like a living thing. Before entering, I looked back one last time and saw all my chalk marks glowing faintly in the dark, each one pulsing in slow rhythm, like a signal trying to answer itself. Then the ground trembled, once then twice, and every cairn in the clearing collapsed simultaneously. I stepped inside the cave. The first thing I noticed inside was the sound, not an echo, not dripping, but breathing. Slow, steady, deep enough that it made the air pulse in my chest. Every few seconds, a faint vibration rippled through the walls, like something massive shifting just below the surface. My headlamp beam slid across slick stone, revealing narrow passageways twisting deeper like veins. I marked the entrance with a glow stick and started recording. My voice sounded thin against the darkness. October 17th, 3:26 a.m. Entering cave structure off Cranberry Ridge. Possible connection to missing persons. About 30 feet in, I found claw marks on the walls and not animal scratches. They formed arcs, almost symmetrical, like someone had dragged metal hooks across the stone. There were 7 lines in each arc, repeating at intervals. Each one burned slightly darker around the edges, as if the rock itself had been scorched. My recorder picked up faint tones again, low frequencies beyond normal range. I slowed the playback to half speed. The pattern was identical to what I'd heard in the clearing. 3 short pulses, a pause, then 3 again. Morse code? Maybe. I noted it down and moved deeper. The cave began to widen. The air grew colder, yet heavier, as though saturated with moisture or static. I found fragments of fabric tangled around a stalagmite, grey nylon matching outdoor gear. Next to it, a cracked phone, screen half-lit, cycling endlessly between a single image. A black forest canopy shot upward from the ground. No menu, no buttons working, just that same image flashing, then freezing. I switched to night vision. The walls were etched with symbols, circles connected by lines, forming shapes that almost resembled constellations. Some glowed faintly when the light hit them. They weren't painted. They were carved into the rock and pulsing with a dim organic luminescence, like veins of bioluminescent fungus or something stranger. Then came the whisper. Not in my ear this time, but through the recorder's speaker, faint, delayed, like an audio feed catching up to itself. A woman's voice, trembling, saying, "Please, stop following it." I froze. I hadn't played anything back yet. The tape was running forward. The beam of my headlamp trembled across the ground. Ahead lay footprints again, barefoot, small, pressed deep into the damp soil. The same as before. They led to a narrow tunnel that angled sharply downward. A faint wind blew upward from it, cold and metallic, smelling like rust and rain. "Sarah?" I called out stupidly. My voice cracked against the stone and came back twice, once as an echo, and once delayed by half a second longer, as if someone else repeated it quietly. I climbed down. The passage constricted so tight that my shoulders scraped both sides. Every few feet, the sound of breathing grew louder, though my own pulse drowned most of it. I reached a small cavern, spherical, about 10 feet wide, ceiling low enough to touch. The air shimmered faintly like heat mirage, though it was freezing. In the center lay an old tape recorder, half buried in dirt. The brand was Sony, early 2000s. When I pressed play, it didn't click mechanically, it screamed. A distorted voice burst out, warped by time, repeating the same phrase over and over. It was never a voice, it was the mouth. I yanked my headphones off, but the words kept going, not from the device, but from every wall around me, as if the stone had memorized them. The breathing quickened. My headlamp dimmed until only the glow carvings lit the space. They pulsed faster, syncing with the rhythm of my heart. And then silence. The kind that presses on your ears until you realize you're hearing your own blood. I held the recorder close. Its screen flickered and displayed coordinates that shouldn't exist. Latitude, 38.215. Longitude, 999.999. Beneath that, text appeared for just a second. Playback active. Source nearby. I aimed the camera around. Nothing but wet stone. I whispered, "If anyone finds this, I'm continuing toward the signal. Jacob or Sarah might still—" A sudden hiss drowned my words. My radio turned on by itself, emitting bursts of static. Between the noise, voices overlapped, male and female, arguing, crying, laughing. Fragments of human sound stripped of meaning. I pointed the lens toward the corner of the chamber. For one frame, I caught something impossible. A mouth forming in the rock itself, stretching open. Layers of stone peeling like flesh. It wasn't screaming. It was listening. I stumbled back, slamming my shoulder into the wall. The mouth vanished. Only wet mineral remained. But the ground beneath my feet started to move, rising and falling like a slow inhale. "Field note," I whispered, shaking. "Possible geological breathing effect. Subterranean air pressure?" Even saying it, I didn't believe myself. I reached for my chalk bag to mark the exit. It was gone. The path behind me had sealed, the tunnel now solid stone. That's when the voices returned. Dozens this time, all whispering in sync, rising from the floor, vibrating through my bones. They weren't speaking English anymore, but the rhythm matched a heartbeat. Then, buried beneath the chorus, one clear voice cut through, male, hoarse, and close to my ear. "Mark, it's me." It was Jacob. The recorder fell from my hand. The screen flickered again, showing live video feed, but not from my camera. It showed me from behind, standing in that same chamber. A shadow taller than both walls stood inches away, its shape bending the light, faceless, only movement where a head should be. I turned slowly. Nothing. Only blackness breathing against my cheek. And then, a sound so low it felt like thunder inside my chest. A word, not English, vibrating through every stone around me. It said something I can't repeat, something I can still feel in my teeth. The recording cut out right after. I woke up at sunrise outside the cave entrance, camera beside me, batteries full, footage intact, except for 23 minutes missing from the timeline. The glow stick I'd left by the entrance was crushed flat, and written in the dirt next to it in perfect block letters was a single sentence: "You should have stayed above." I don't remember how I got out of that cave. One moment I was surrounded by the sound of breathing stone. The next I was lying in a ditch beside my jeep, covered in mud, camera beside me. The sun had barely risen, a grey smear behind the ridges. My hands were trembling so badly that it took 3 tries to start the engine. The radio switched on by itself, cycling through static. I turned the dial, trying to find a station. Every channel sounded the same, low humming, short bursts of tone, then silence. But one frequency caught my attention, 97.3 FM. The broadcast repeated a single voice, monotone, childlike, 32, 32, 32. I counted 32 repetitions before it went dead. That number appeared again when I checked the recovered footage. The metadata of the missing 23 minutes showed a file named 32 Unknown AVI, created at 3:32 a.m. The timestamp didn't match my recorder's clock. It was 6 hours ahead. I played it frame by frame. Most of it was static, until the 17-second mark. Then the image stabilized. I was still inside the cave, but the walls looked different. They weren't rock anymore. They were faces. Dozens of them pressed into the surface like clay, eyes closed, mouths open. Some were whispering, and one of them looked exactly like me. The footage ended abruptly with a blinding white flash. When the video stopped, the audio continued for another 32 seconds, faint but clear. Sarah's voice saying, "It's not a cave, Mark, it's a recording chamber. It hears everything." I left Cranberry Ridge that morning and drove straight to Boone County Sheriff's Office. Miller was waiting, arms crossed, face pale. I told him everything. He didn't speak until I mentioned the voice that said my name. Then he just sighed and muttered, "You heard it too." He pulled a file from his desk drawer, brown folder stained, labeled Unresolved Audio Incidents, 2014-2023. Inside were dozens of printed spectrograms, waveforms shaped like faces. Miller pointed to one. "We found these patterns in missing persons' voicemail messages, ham radio logs, even Forest Service broadcasts. Always the same frequency band, 19 hertz. Below human hearing, but it leaves traces." He flipped to a page marked with a red tab. A photo of a ranger, Thomas Hale, missing since 2019. The last thing Hale said on radio was, "They're under us. The voices come from the soil. We never found his body." I asked why the cave wasn't sealed off. Miller stared out the window for a long moment. "Because every time we close it, the air pressure changes. People miles away start hearing things in their wells, in basements. It's not local anymore." That night I booked a motel on Route 219. I barely slept. At 2 a.m. I woke to static coming from my laptop. It had turned on by itself, camera light glowing red. On the screen a file appeared, Auto Sync 32 WAV. I hadn't connected any drives. The waveform displayed was identical to the whisper pattern I'd heard in the cave. I played it. The sound was low, rhythmic, like wind in a tunnel. Then a man's voice emerged, distorted but articulate. "Mark, you left it open." The air in the room thickened. My reflection in the window flickered. Not from light, but from movement behind me. I turned, no one there. The door was locked from the inside. I turned off the laptop and tried to breathe. By morning, the motel manager said the power had cut out around 2 a.m. "We get that a lot," he said, wiping his glasses. "Ever since those hikers disappeared." He mentioned others had come through. A podcaster, a paranormal team, even a grad student from Marshall University studying infrasound anomalies. None stayed more than a night. I packed my gear and drove to the nearest university. Dr. Elena Ruiz, an acoustics specialist, agreed to meet me after I showed her a clip from the footage. She played the cave audio through a spectrogram analyzer. Her brow furrowed. "This isn't just sound," she said. "These frequencies are forming complex harmonics. They look intentional, almost biological." I asked what she meant. She zoomed into the graph. "See this?" she said, pointing at a repeating structure within the waveform. "It's similar to a human laryngeal pattern, except it's inverted. It's like something imitating speech from the other side of the medium." Ruiz gave me a portable recorder tuned to infrasound, warning me not to stay near the ridge past midnight. "These frequencies can cause hallucinations, nausea, even panic attacks," she said. But her eyes betrayed a deeper fear, the kind born of seeing something science can't classify. That night, I returned to Cranberry Ridge. The forest felt alive in a way I can't describe, every tree humming at the edge of hearing. The air tasted metallic. I placed Ruiz's recorder on the ground and waited. The silence stretched for minutes. Then faintly, the ground began to thrum. When I checked the screen, the infrasound reading spiked, 1903 hertz, same as the sheriff's report. The waveform pulsed, forming symmetrical peaks. I increased the gain, and then a new signal layered over it, a voice saying 32 again and again, until the device shut itself off. I took a step back and noticed the soil moving, circular ripples expanding outward, like something breathing beneath. Then I realized the ripples matched my own heartbeat. My flashlight flickered. For a split second, every tree trunk around me bore a face, human, expressionless, mouth slightly open. When the light steadied, the faces were gone. I ran to the Jeep, slammed the door, and hit record on my dashcam. As I looked back toward the tree line, a shape crossed the road. Tall, emaciated, moving wrong. Its joints bent backward, head tilted as if listening. It paused under the beam of my headlights, and though it had no eyes, I knew it was looking at me. Then it raised one hand, not to threaten, but to mimic. It pressed an invisible recorder against its mouth. And from the static of my car radio, I heard my own voice saying, "If you're watching this, subscribe. We'll keep uncovering what others won't." Then it vanished into the fog. The dashcam continued to record for 3 more minutes. When I reviewed the footage later, the timestamp showed 3:32 a.m. again. Every frequency, every number, every whisper, always 32. When I got back to Knoxville, I didn't sleep for 2 days. The footage looped in my head. The figure in the fog, the voice from the radio repeating my own words. Every noise in my apartment seemed amplified. The hum of the fridge, the pipes knocking, the faint whisper of traffic outside. Everything sounded alive. I started cataloging all the recordings again. Each file I'd made since entering the ridge now carried a faint, inaudible hum, a signature frequency at 19 hertz. Even my voiceovers, even background silence. Ruiz confirmed it wasn't interference. "That's resonance," she said. "Your microphone's picking up something that's not airborne. It's inside the materials." I tried to upload the footage to a secure drive, but every time I did, the files multiplied. Instead of one clip, I'd get 32 copies, or with slightly different timestamps. When I played them simultaneously, they layered into a haunting harmony. 32 versions of myself breathing, whispering, and laughing out of sync. That's when I realized it wasn't just sound. It was a response. The flash drive from the beginning, the one that started all of this, I'd left it in an evidence box. When I checked it again, it contained a new folder titled Field Note Return. I hadn't created it. Inside was a single .mp3 file with a date 1 week in the future. I pressed play, static, male voice shaky. "If anyone's hearing this, I made it back to the ridge. The cave's breathing again. Don't let it hear you think." Distortion. Another voice whispering. "Mark, it's not a cave. It's an ear." The voice was mine. I froze, hand trembling over the keyboard. Ruiz ran the waveform through analysis. It matched my vocal pattern perfectly, including background hum consistent with my Knoxville apartment. But the metadata showed it was recorded next week on October 23rd. I asked Ruiz if it could be faked. "Not without access to your microphone hardware," she said quietly. And even then, the signal harmonics suggest it's being transmitted, not stored. Like your own voice was being sent back. That night I dreamt I was back in the woods. I could see the cairns again, perfectly rebuilt, and a light flickering from the cave mouth. I walked closer and realized it wasn't firelight. It was my own camcorder's red record lamp. And beside it, a figure crouched low, holding the camera to its chest. My camera, my hands. It looked up, it was me. I woke up gasping, fingernails filled with dirt. The taste of iron lingered in my mouth. I called Sheriff Miller again. No answer. Drove to Boone County myself. His office was empty, door unlocked, coffee half drunk, radio on mute. Files scattered everywhere. On his desk was a small envelope addressed to me. Inside, an SD card and a handwritten note. "If you're hearing it, don't follow the echo. They use it to map you." The SD card contained surveillance footage time-stamped 2 days earlier. It showed the sheriff's cruiser parked near the ridge. Headlights on, engine running. Then, without sound, Miller steps out of the car and walks into the fog. He doesn't come back. I enhanced the final frame. Behind him, the trees were vibrating. Not from wind, but in perfect synchronization, like a ripple of sound through solid wood. I packed up and drove toward Cranberry again. I told myself it was to find answers, but deep down I knew it was because the signal wanted me back. Every radio station between here and the ridge played the same faint hum, 19 hertz under everything. Even country music, even talk shows. The world itself was starting to tune in. I stopped at a diner in Raynell. The waitress recognized me from my YouTube channel. "You're that ghost guy," she said, smiling nervously. "You ever find those kids?" I told her no. Her smile faded. "My cousin worked SR up there last year. He said the woods talk when the fog's heavy." "You think that's true?" I didn't answer. When I left, she handed me a folded napkin. They told him never to say it out loud, she whispered. But he wrote it down. On the napkin, 1932 MHz. The voice returns through reflection. I played the frequency through my shortwave receiver once I reached the ridge. Nothing at first, just static and wind. Then a faint metallic tapping like a Morse rhythm. 3 short, 1 long, 3 short. I recorded it. The recorder displayed a signal strength indicator, climbing to red. And then, amid the static, a sound I will never forget. The crackle of a campfire, faint laughter, and Sarah's voice whispering, "You came back. It always does." I shouted her name into the dark, forgetting the sheriff's warning. The forest answered. Not with an echo, but with a perfect playback of my voice. Identical tone, identical breath, coming from 32 different directions at once. The trees shuddered. The ground flexed under my boots. The air pulsed like a speaker. I ran toward the sound, camera rolling. Every frame warped, as if light itself were being bent by vibration. The deeper I went, the more the forest looked like film grain, reality flickering between frames. And then, through the noise, a faint glow appeared ahead, the mouth of the cave. It was wider now, breathing faster. Inside, the glow marks on the walls had multiplied, stretching upward like veins of light. The deeper I walked, the more the temperature dropped. My breath crystallized. Every step echoed twice, one from my foot, one from something walking just behind me. I stopped. The echo stopped. I took another step and it didn't. Something exhaled against the back of my neck, cold and wet. I turned. The tunnel was empty. But in the distance, faint blue light pulsed like a heartbeat. I moved closer until I reached the chamber again, except it wasn't stone anymore. It looked like the inside of an eardrum, walls slick and glistening, pulsing with sound. In the center sat my recorder, but newer, cleaner, with next week's date glowing on the display. It was already running. A voice came from it, my own again, but tired, older. "If you're watching this, you should have never come back." It's listening through me now. The hum rose into a scream, not mechanical but organic, vibrating through every nerve in my body. My camera glitched, showing hundreds of overlapping frames. My face, Jacob's, Sarah's, Miller's, all speaking in silence. I blacked out. When I opened my eyes, I was outside again, lying in the road. Dawn. The Jeep engine idling by itself. The radio whispered one word over and over. Return. I uploaded my last recording to the drive, but it refused to stay there. Every few minutes it would vanish, then reappear in a new folder. Desktop downloads temp. Each copy had a slightly different size, a few kilobytes added each time, as if it were growing. So I stopped counting after the 30-second duplicate. By now I'd stopped hearing silence. Even the quiet of my apartment vibrated faintly. A tone just below awareness, 19 hertz, the same hum from the woods. It pulsed under the city's noise, under my heartbeat. Sometimes it synced with my breath. I recorded for 2 hours straight that night, leaving the mic on my desk. At 2:11 a.m., a faint voice broke through the hum. It said my name, slow and deliberate. "Mark," then another word. "Repeat." I didn't speak. The waveform still reacted, as if someone else was answering. By dawn, I couldn't tell if the apartment's walls were trembling or if my vision was. Ruiz came by to collect more data, but she stopped midway through setting up her analyzer. Her hand froze above the laptop, eyes wide. "Mark," she whispered, "it's responding to us." "What do you mean?" "The spectrogram. It's showing both our voices and a third one repeating every phrase we say with a half-second delay." She played it back. The third voice wasn't a recording. It was breathing between our sentences, imitating our cadence, growing clearer with every loop. Ruiz left that night and didn't return my calls after. I tried isolating the signal again, playing it through noise-canceling headphones at half speed. Beneath the hum, something else was there, a pattern almost like phonemes reversed. I reversed the audio back, slowed it to 0.75x, and boosted gain. The words became audible. 32 breaths. Then remember, that same number again. Always 32. I played the file backward once more. This time it formed a rhythm. Inhale, exhale, whisper, pause. Almost human, but not quite. It sounded like breathing through water. At 3:32 a.m., the lights in my apartment dimmed. My laptop camera turned on by itself. The display glitched, showing my reflection, except it wasn't moving with me. It blinked a second later, smiled faintly, then mouthed the words "record." The mic indicator turned red. I stood perfectly still as the recording software opened on its own. The screen displayed Rec 3232. I tried shutting the laptop, but it resisted. The hinge felt magnetic. Then I heard it, not from the speakers, but from behind the walls. A faint voice saying, "You're inside the playback now." I ran outside into the parking lot. The air was thick, pressing down like underwater pressure. Streetlights flickered in the same pulse rhythm I'd seen in the woods. 2 quick flashes, 1 pause, repeat. When I looked up, the sky above the ridge glowed faint blue. A single vertical line extending into the clouds like a signal beam. It pulsed every few seconds, and each pulse carried sound deep and resonant, making the ground vibrate. I drove toward it. The roads were empty except for fog curling low, thin as breath. Radio static filled the car again. At 1932 minutes, the same phrase played on a loop. 32, so remember, so 32, so remember. I reached the ridge just before dawn. The air smelled like rain and iron. The cave was gone, or at least hidden. The ground where it had been was smooth now, covered in frost. My camera showed interference, the image bending like heat haze. Then as I stood there in the grey light, my phone vibrated. A notification appeared. Bluetooth device connected. Mark's Canon XF705, the same model as mine. But my camera was turned off. A low tone rolled across the forest, deep enough to make the trees bow. From somewhere beneath, a voice surfaced, distorted but close. "If you're watching this, you already pressed play." The earth split just enough for air to escape, a hiss that formed syllables. It wasn't language, more like a tone learning to speak. I aimed the camera at the sound. The lens fogged immediately, internal condensation forming words across the glass. "Feed us sound." I tried to step back, but the ground vibrated harder, as if something beneath was mimicking my movements. Every footstep echoed twice, then 4 times, then continuously, the forest creating infinite playback of my motion. I shouted for Ruiz, no answer, but her voice came anyway, not from the forest, but from inside my recorder. "Mark, it remembers voices. Every sound you make teaches it how to form more." The air pressure dropped. My ears rang. The fog around me thickened until the world turned grey. Then came the rhythm. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 knocks. I followed it toward the sound. The ridge sloped downward into a shallow hollow. In the center, 32 stones stood upright in a perfect circle. On each one a symbol carved, the same I'd seen glowing in the cave. The soil between them pulsed faintly. When I stepped closer, my phone buzzed again. A new file was being created automatically. Voices in the Appalachian Woods final WAV I hadn't started recording. The timer on the screen showed 003200. The microphone levels fluctuated, even in silence. Then faintly, the same voice spoke from the phone speaker. "This is where it starts over. Every listener becomes the next recording." I realized then the signal wasn't just transmitted. It was recursive. It used anyone who heard it as a new channel. Every investigation, every documentary, every viewer became another frequency. The static rose, dense and sharp, like thousands of insects hissing in unison. I dropped the phone. The waveform on its screen formed a mouth. And from it, in my own voice, "If you're watching this, subscribe. We'll keep uncovering what others won't." Then everything went silent. When I opened my eyes again, I was sitting back in my car, parked on Pine Hollow Road. The dashboard clock blinked 3:32 a.m. My camera was on the seat beside me, still recording. The footage showed me walking into the woods, over and over 32 times, each version slightly out of sync, each one whispering my name as the frame faded to black. When I woke up that morning, the world was too quiet. Not peaceful, empty. Like the air had been erased. Even my own breathing sounded artificial, looping back half a second late, like a delayed echo through invisible speakers. I checked my recorder. It had been running all night. The file name changed by itself every minute. Mark Su1 Mark Su2 up to Mark 32 2. Each file exactly 60 seconds long, each starting the same way. If you're watching this, I hadn't spoken. The timestamps matched every minute I'd been unconscious in the car. When I played the last one, a faint metallic heartbeat filled the speakers, 19 hertz modulation beneath a whisper I couldn't ignore. The voice wasn't mine this time. It was Sarah. "It needs listeners, Mark, that's how it spreads. Don't upload it." But I already had. The auto-sync drive had uploaded everything while I slept. My channel was live again, the video already at 60,000 views. The comments flooded in. What was that sound at 3:32? My screen flickered when he said subscribe. I heard breathing in my room. I tried deleting it, but the upload wouldn't stop. Every time I hit remove, a new copy appeared, retitled Voices in the Appalachian Woods, a full audio restoration. The more I tried to stop it, the more my computer slowed, until the cursor froze and my microphone light blinked on. The screen displayed text that typed itself, keystroke by keystroke. "Do not interrupt the transmission." Then, for the first time since all this began, I heard something human again. A knock on my door. 3 knocks. Pause, 3 more. I looked through the peephole. Nobody. Just the hallway light flickering in rhythm. 2 flashes, 1 pause, repeat. I grabbed my camera and opened the door. The hallway was empty, but my recorder picked up a faint audio trail. A whispering chorus, layered hundreds of times over itself, forming a word stretched into sound. Replay. The fluorescent lights above me hummed in sync with my pulse. Every bulb flickered slightly out of phase, forming a rhythm that felt deliberate. When I aimed the camera upward, the light stabilized. When I lowered it, the flicker returned. It was responding to the lens. Down the hall, a figure turned the corner. Tall, shoulders slouched, moving slowly. I shouted, "Sheriff Miller?" The figure stopped. Its head tilted sideways, bones cracking softly, and it mimicked my voice perfectly. "Sheriff Miller?" The echo lingered long after the shape vanished. I slammed the door and turned on every light, but the shadows didn't behave right. They leaned toward me, even with lamps behind my back. I aimed my flashlight at the floor. The beam split into 32 smaller ones, each bending slightly away. That's when I realized it wasn't light at all. It was reflection, fragments of my own image, delayed, replayed. The sound returned, the breathing, the hum, but softer now, patient. It no longer felt external. It felt internal, resonating behind my teeth. I turned on my camera again. The feed displayed my apartment, normal, until I moved. When I stepped left, the version of me on screen lagged a second, then caught up too quickly, like it was trying to predict me. I waved my hand. The image on screen waved a second before I did. I backed away slowly. The camera kept moving forward. Then through the speaker came a voice, flat, mechanical, identical to mine. "You've become the signal, Mark. You're what it plays now." My phone buzzed violently. A notification appeared. Live broadcast started. I hadn't pressed anything. On screen, my channel was streaming live. Viewers were commenting in real time. "Is this real?" I can hear him breathing through my speakers. Why is his reflection smiling? I looked at the camera feed, and there it was. Behind me, reflected in the TV screen, a second Mark standing just out of frame. Face pale and static, mouth slightly open, like he was mouthing along to the comments. Then he looked at me. The livestream chat froze. Every viewer comment disappeared, replaced by one single line repeated over and over. "Playback active. Source confirmed." The reflection began to move closer. Not toward the TV, toward me. I grabbed the camera and turned it off, but the feed kept broadcasting. My reflection stepped out of the dark, features warping into pixel noise, flickering between my face and Jacob's, then Miller's, then something without a face at all. I shouted into the lens, "If you're watching this, shut it off. Don't let it loop." But the voice that came out wasn't mine. It was delayed and softer, calmer, almost pleading. "Keep it playing." My lights exploded, bulbs bursting one by one in a cascading hum. Sparks showered the floor. The walls shook. The laptop screen filled with a waveform, 32 overlapping frequencies pulsing like a heartbeat. I covered my ears, but it didn't stop. The sound wasn't in the air anymore. It was in me, and then silence again. When I opened my eyes, the room was empty. My gear was gone. Only the recorder remained on the floor, light blinking red. The playback began automatically. My voice. Chapter 7, the playback loop, recorded October 23rd, 3:32 a.m. Except I hadn't said that yet. The recording continued. narrating every movement I made in real time, word for word, predicting the next line before I spoke it. I whispered, "Stop." The recorder whispered back, "Stop." And then, too late. The waveform spiked. The red light turned solid. When I looked up, the walls around me had become soundproof foam, black, seamless, soft. I touched one. It pulsed like flesh, and beneath the surface, faint but endless, I could hear every voice I'd ever recorded, whispering my own name 32 times in perfect unison. The apartment doesn't have windows anymore. I don't remember when that happened. The walls hum softly, like a microphone testing its own feedback. The clock on my desk reads 3:32 a.m., but it's been that time for hours, maybe days. I tried leaving once. The hallway outside had no end. Doors repeating down both sides, identical numbers, 32, 32, 32. I recorded it on my camera, but when I played it back, the footage looped infinitely, door after door, each one opening a little wider every cycle. Inside each, a shadow, mine delayed by a heartbeat. The files on my recorder now number exactly 32,000. Everyone begins with my name whispered, and everyone ends with breathing that's not mine. "I..." called Ruiz again, desperate. The call connected, but all I heard was my own voice whispering, "Stop transmitting." And then, faintly behind it, her voice trembling, "Mark, you're on every frequency. You've become the carrier." I turned off every device, laptop, phone, radio, but the hum stayed. I smashed the camera. The audio continued from the broken casing, speakerless as if the air itself was the playback medium. At 4 a.m., or maybe still 3:32, I heard knocking again and the same rhythm, 3 short, pause, 3 short. Only this time it came from inside the wall. I placed my ear against it. There was a voice on the other side, low and distorted. It said, "The ridge is under every city now. The ground remembers." Then came another sound, the unmistakable hiss of my own field mic turning on. I looked at my recorder. No lights, no power. Yet a red indicator pulsed faintly beneath the casing. It started recording again, all by itself. My voice. October 24th, field log continuation. The transmission has entered ambient space. I didn't say those words, but my mouth moved with them. The wall opposite me began to ripple like water disturbed by bass. Behind it, faint outlines appeared. Faces pressed into the surface, shifting under the vibration. One of them looked like Jacob, one like Sarah. The third, Miller, eyes open, mouth moving silently. I stepped closer. Their expressions changed in rhythm, mouths opening wider with every pulse. The hum deepened until it became a shape, sound-forming matter. Then suddenly silence, the kind that isn't absence but waiting. My phone, which should have been dead, lit up with a new video notification from my own channel. Live. Voices in the Appalachian Woods. Recovered tape number 32. I didn't touch anything. The feed opened automatically. It showed me, sitting right here, narrating this exact moment word for word seconds before I speak it. The title bar glitched and rewrote itself repeatedly. The final episode, The Last Investigator, The Source. Comments flooded in from viewers. It's like he's reading our thoughts. Is this AI or live? My speakers are humming at 19 hertz. Then the chat froze. Every username vanished, replaced by one phrase repeating endlessly, "We're listening." The walls pulsed in sync with the text on screen. My breath misted even though the air was warm. Then faintly from my own monitor's speaker, "Mark, do you understand now?" The voice was Sarah's, clearer than ever, calm, almost compassionate. "It doesn't haunt people, Mark, it records them. The more they listen, the stronger it gets. Every ear is a microphone. Every story a channel," I whispered. "Then what am I?" The answer came from everywhere at once. From the static, from the floor, from my lungs. I heard the final layer. The room brightened, not from light but from vibration. The walls turned transparent, showing vast shapes beneath the earth, networks of tunnels glowing faintly like veins. Through them moved something massive and slow, a shadow that pulsed with sound. It wasn't a creature. It was a memory system. The forest, the caves, the static, all part of a single mechanism recording consciousness through resonance. Every missing person wasn't taken. They were stored. The red light on my recorder blinked 32 times, then stayed on. My voice began speaking again without me moving my lips. "If you're watching this, you're part of the loop. The investigation never ends. The air grew dense. The tone rose beyond hearing. My vision fractured into frames like my eyes had become cameras. I could see every version of myself, walking into the woods, collapsing in the cave, staring at the monitor, all overlaid like exposures in a single film. Then came the last sound, a single low frequency that vibrated through everything, erasing edges, blending every echo into one endless chord. For a heartbeat, it was peaceful. I saw the ridge again. Dawn light through fog, campfire smoke, two figures sitting close. Sarah and Jacob smiling, unaware. The whisper came from the wind between them. Listen. Static swallowed the image. When the picture cleared, there was only the forest. The camera lay on the ground, lens pointing up at the pale morning sky. Then faintly a voice, my voice, speaking the final line, the one that never should have been part of the story. If you're watching this, subscribe. Pokix will keep uncovering what others won't.